Hi, Julie Jones from SSB Performance, Smarter, Stronger, Better Mindset Training. Here with this week's Mindset Made Simple Tip of the Week, brought to you by Game Day Sportswear. This week we're talking about from stuck to available, the importance of flexibility. We're going to be talking about psychological flexibility and availability and its impact on performance. Well, you have probably heard of the saying that says you can't read the label if you're inside the jar. Well, that's not just some crazy statement. Or a metaphor. It's a truth backed by performance science. And when we are stuck inside the jar, when we're so deep inside of our emotions that they're attached to our identity, it's really, really, really hard to be our best. We can't reflect. It's really hard to adjust. We're not resilient. All of these things go when we're stuck inside the jar. And that leads us to understand that psychological flexibility and being available are critical to our performance. We can think of the inside of the jar as our internal world. So our self-talk, frustration, our emotion, the way that we feel from our emotion, maybe pressure, all of these things are inside the jar. And if that jar starts to get shaken up by pressure, or shaken up by expectations, or shaken up by uncertainty, it's really hard to read what's on the outside. We lose our ability to be responsive. We lose clarity, and sometimes we even lose our purpose. So figuring out how to get outside the jar and be psychologically flexible or be available can make a huge difference in what's going to, our outcome. Right? What's going to come next, what we're going to do with what's right in front of us. But if we can pause and we can zoom out and we can see things from almost like a 30,000 foot view, we give ourselves a chance, instead of just blindly reacting to things. If we can observe the landscape, if we can pull in information, we become the container. And there's a separation then between what's inside and the container and our ability to read the outside of the container. We give ourselves a little bit of space between that stimulus and response. So Bond et al. In 2011 defined psychological flexibility as this: the ability to stay in contact with the present moment, regardless of unpleasant thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations, while choosing one's behavior based on the situation and our personal values. Now, we tied to last week's tip about values and building culture in a team that is cyclical, a door that is revolving, or our values matter to what we're doing in our own personal performance as well. But ultimately, this psychological flexibility is being able to manage the fact that we don't feel good. We're not thinking really well. We're not being real productive thinkers, and still be able to do our job. So that's what Bond et al. Had to say. Well, Chris Lewandowski and Julie Jones, my strength coach, and I, we talk about availability. He talks about it on the physical side. I talk about it on the mental side. And what we mean by being available is being ready both physically and mentally to use our talent and our training to win what's in front of us. To do what we know we can do, regardless of how we feel, regardless of what we're thinking, regardless of what's going on around us, but to go out there and be able to use what we have to be our best. Because it doesn't matter how good we are if we're not available. That's the difference between surviving and performing. That's the difference. So I'm working with a high-level pitcher right now, and he's really good. He plays for one of the top summer programs in the country. And he's home now because he had an outing where things were just humming along, and he walked somebody and then the bottom fell out. So our lesson here is that we're not what we think. And when we think, especially about how we feel, performance suffers. It's the fastest way to go into the tank, is to start thinking and then start thinking about how we feel and start thinking about how we feel and how that's going to affect what's going on. Boom, down the toilet. Strike out, strike out, strike out, ball, walk, oh no. So it's this external circumstance that stirs up the internal stuff that's going on. Whether it's our self-talk, whether it's our heart rate, whether it's all these different things, the jar starts to shake and the lid gets tighter and tighter. And it's about, there's so much pressure going on in there that what's happening on the outside changes the way we're able to manage what's on the inside. And the more tangled up we get in our thoughts, like I can't do this or I can't do that, the more we believe them. But here's the crazy part. What we say isn't true. I want you to try it. Okay? Say, I can't raise my right arm. Say it a few times. I can't raise my right arm. 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 Try raising your right arm while you're saying it. I'll bet you $100 that you can raise your right arm. Because the truth of it is that what we say, the thought, is different than the action. They're not the same. And if we say things over and over and over and over, they lose their meaning. Say, I can't raise my right arm for 60 seconds, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, what am I even talking about? These words mean nothing. And so many times when we're trying to perform and we get stuck inside the jar, the words inside mean nothing. They're just words. And if we say them over and over and over for 60 seconds, which seems like an eternity, we'll realize that they're just words. What's in the container is not as important as what is in front of us. What we say and what we do don't have to be the same. If we can separate ourselves from what we're thinking and feeling and be able to realize that we can still act differently, you do it all the time, you do it every day, that is the key to being able to unlock our potential and stay available and psychologically flexible. So, how can we get to this point? When we're inside the jar, it's really hard to gather information, right? It's really hard to use that information to change and to focus and to adapt. I read this quote by Will Smith, and he talks about that we need to stop looking at so much that's going on. The mistake, how long we're going to be out here, what's going on, the outcome. He says, stop thinking about the wall. There is no wall. There are only bricks. Your job is to lay this brick perfectly, then move on to the next brick. It's about focusing on the immediate task. It's about being present instead of being overwhelmed by either how we feel, what we're thinking, or what is going to happen in the future, or what already happened in the past. Those things are irrelevant to what's going on right now. Can we use information from it? Sure. But if we're thinking about those two things and we're trying to act right now, we're screwed. But here's the truth of it. High performers, they have a jar too. And inside that jar is a whole bunch of stuff, the same stuff that we feel on a daily basis. There's self-talk that's not always productive. Our heart rate gets up. High performers think and feel uncertain. They think and feel a little scared. They think and feel sometimes anxious. But the difference is they don't spend much time thinking about how they feel. They know the game does not care how they feel. They know that the audience does not care. They know their boss doesn't care how they feel if their boss needs something from them. They spend more time noticing and then redirecting their attention, not holding it down like the beach ball underneath the water, but redirecting their attention to something that is going to help them make the next best choice. Not how they feel about it, not about what might happen 10 minutes from now or what happened in the past, but something that can help them make the next best choice at the moment. They figure out how to use what's in the jar to their advantage. All of the things that are in there, the ingredients. They can read the label because they're out here looking in and saying, you know what? I do feel that way. And yes, that's in the jar. And I see it. And I might need to adjust this way to make sure that, I'm using everything I can to my advantage. But they can see what's in the jar and manage it instead of being in it and not being able to get out. They keep what matters front and center. They create space between the stuff inside and what's going on out here. It doesn't overwhelm it. They don't become their thoughts and feelings. They can move their arm up even though they say that they can't. They work despite the ingredients. It comes down to awareness. It comes down to adaptability, and it comes down to presence. These are the things that we must have in order to be our best. So a few ways, aside from realizing that we can raise our arm whether we say we can or not, is to ask some good questions. We talk about questions a lot, and here are a couple good questions that we can ask ourselves when we start to feel like we're inside the jar. This would be a good one. What would an outsider see right now? If we could write these things down, it'd be even better, but lots of times we don't have time for that. What's one thing that I might not be noticing? Now we're starting to look for solutions. Then we can also practice separating ourselves from our thoughts and feelings. When we notice the thought that says, I'm having that thought that I'm not ready, there it is, right? We can say, what would I do right now if I didn't believe it? What would I do right now if I didn't believe that I'm not ready? Well, I would walk up, I would think about my evidence journal, I would think about everything I did to get here, I'd think about what I need to do, not how I feel, and I would do this, whatever this is. That's action, that's agency, that's adaptability, that is performance. And when we get distracted by emotions, we can ask, what is important now, right? What's most important now? What does the situation require of me? And can I do it even though I feel this way? Yes, because again, we act differently than we feel all the time. You don't run people off the road when they piss you off, even though you might want to. You don't do it because it's not the right thing to do. You can act different than you feel. What actions reflect who I want to be? Then we choose the next best thing that matches the answer. Next best action. Questions force us to look for solutions. And when we're looking for solutions, we're not thinking about how we feel. Critical. It's not that you can't feel. It's just that they can't be those feelings can't be guiding your action, your behavior. It can't be clouding your ability to make decisions, your ability to pull in information, your ability to observe the landscape. And then finally, just as we can't see the label from inside the jar all the time, we need people on the outside of the jar to help guide us. And if our jar is so tightly closed that you need one of those rubber things to open the darn thing, we're in trouble. I tell the kids I work with that play soccer all the time, the person next to you sees something different. Think about it. You're driving down the road. You're looking out this side. Your passenger's looking out that side. They say, did you see that? And you're like, no, because you're not looking out the same window. You're at the same time, the same place on the road, the same vehicle, the same surroundings, different information out of different windows. And we've got to pull information in from different windows if we're going to be our best. So what they see can help me. But if I am so tight in worrying about what's going on the inside that I can't hear and process information because my feelings and my thoughts have all of my capacity clogged up, then I'm missing opportunities all around me. So to get what we need, to be who we want to be our best, we have to be flexible and we have to be available. We have to be ready to deal with what's in front of us, regardless of what's going on inside of us. We're bigger than our experiences. We're bigger than our feelings. Those things can be there and we can still be here, plain and simple. We're not our thoughts. We're not our feelings. We're the container. We're on the outside of the container. We're holding things together. We're good. We just have to be a big enough container to hold all this and be able to read what's on the outside of us and realize what's in here doesn't define me. It just exists because I care. Because what I'm doing matters. But I can still do whatever I need to do, read the outside of the jar, find out what's going on around me, and be my best. It's the ability to notice our experience without being ruled by it. It's being able to read the label on the outside of the jar, to be the container that holds the contents. All of these capacities are what allow us to respond rather than react, to stay connected to the moment and the information that's going to help us succeed. It allows us to free up ourselves and go and play or speak or commit or whatever it is. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to step outside of ourselves, get into and immersed in what's going on around us. That's what flow is. So the next time we feel pressure, we can ask ourselves, am I stuck in the jar or am I reading the label? Because that moment of awareness is when our peak performance takes off. So if you're looking for a program for the 2025-26 school year, I'd love to set one up for you. We can talk about containers and focus and everything that can help your team be better. Shoot me an email at juliej@ssbperformance.com. And until next week, have a great week.